Welcome everyone to the room. Georgie Nugent and Peter Wall, our Saratoga representatives, are here. George, we haven't seen Georgie in about 4 years, Georgie. Peter, I hope you're feeling better from your ankle injury. Would also like to introduce Zach Stever, who's our president of Local 1321, represents everybody who works hard here at CDTA, so welcome to the board meeting. Glad to have you. We'll start with the approval of the minutes of the last meeting, February 23rd. Can I get a motion to approve? A second?
Second.
Joe, thank you. Any edits, changes, subtractions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved. We'll move on to recognitions. Connor.
Yep. Favorite part of the meeting. Mr. Williams? Mr. May, come on up, please. This is Ian Williams. Ian is a 25-year employee. As I say all the time, you will seldom hear Ian's name or see Ian on any list of whatever, because as Mr. Ming says, I could use 50 of them, 75 of them. Comes to work every day, does what he's supposed to do, and goes about his business. That's what we like. We could use more Ian Williams. Let me tell you the Ian Williams story. Came to us from New York City, where he was in the trucking industry. He was really trying to get into the New York City transit system, if the truth be told. But after taking his test down there, the process, like everything, I think in a big bureaucracy, was a little longer than he would have liked. His brother lived here in Albany and suggested he apply to CDTA. He did. We moved quickly. He was hired in March of 1997. 25 years later, here we are. It's a familiar story. Drove weekends in Star for a while, and then moved over to fixed route operations. Started on the Route 12 Washington Avenue. Lots of people 25 years ago. Lots of people today. And has driven everything in between. I like this line. He'll drive anywhere that he can get overtime. Right now, it's the Ian Williamses of the world that are saving our baby. Honestly, they're saving our baby. He enjoys the seniority system that we have in place. So you go, Zach, this is not a one-sided conversation. He keeps work runs, vacations, and time off in order. The ATU has created a brotherhood and a family away from home from Ian. So we appreciate the structure that the union environment brings. Lots of things have changed in Ian's opinions over the years. Fair collection methods. He remembers when we had transfers, so do I. One of my first jobs, my boss called me and said, we got to give her transfers. I didn't know what a transfer was. Day cards, for those of you who remember day cards, we had drivers filled out a day card and basically kept track of their boardings and activity on buses. Think about that, how far we've come. Now we have a navigator card, mobile cashless payment, automatic fare collection, counting systems, and on and on. But as you can tell, Ian likes to stay healthy, rides his bike, and goes for walks, and most of all likes to travel. I'm going to try to get some of these places. You work all the time, you work overtime, yet you got to go to Dubai, London, Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, the Philippines, Jamaica, and the Grand Canyon, to name a few. How do you do that? How do you do that? Are you juggling the books? And Tokyo is on the bucket list. Nice. Ian would like to retire in about 10 years and spend half his time locally, another half in Jamaica. He wants to have the energy to enjoy it, so he doesn't want to stick around too long. I know that feeling. I'm trying to understand that. So thanks for 25 years of service, Ian. You're a rock. We appreciate it. So Zach and I had a conversation yesterday, Jack Stever, and he said, you told me that it might be good if I come to the board meetings, be part of the process. I said, yeah. Any tips? I said, yeah, well, make sure you dress up, take a shower. He did all those, and I said, you're gonna find out that it's not as one-sided as some of your cohorts say. So hopefully that's a good example.
Thank you, Carr. We're going to move on to committee reports, and I'll kick it off with the Board Operations Committee that convened on March 16th here at 110 Washington Avenue. We reviewed the committee agendas for the meetings this month that were held last week. Lisa Morello was also here, providing us with a detailed look at the state budget negotiations. One House bill to provide more operating assistance for transit systems across the state. We're thankful for the support we're receiving from our local legislators, the governor. An on-time budget is expected, and we are hopeful for good results for CDTA. Carm brought us up to speed regarding discussions with Glens Falls officials regarding their municipal transit system and opportunities for CDTA. More discussions will follow on that. We are also starting a renovation project here on the second floor of 110 Washington Avenue. Carpeting will be replaced, walls painted, refreshed the facility. Contractors found asbestos behind the baseboards, so remediation is required. Related to this, we will be holding committee and board meetings for the next few months over at 85 Waterville Avenue. Technology is available to allow for continuation of virtual attendance for anyone who can't be there in person. Google Maps will get us there, I think, Carl. We should be able to figure out how to get to 85 Waterville.
I'm confident that you'll all be able to find it. Instead of taking a left, you take a right.
Yeah, I think I've only been there once. I will be assembling a nominating committee to develop a slate of officers for the 22-23 fiscal year. More to come on that. Our next meeting of the Board Operations Committee is Wednesday, April 13th at 9:15 a.m. in person at 85 Waterville Avenue, okay?
Yep.
And for Microsoft Teams. Any questions about that report?
Is there enough parking over there?
Yeah.
Or should we?
Yeah, or, if you feel like exercising, you can park the car down here and walk up the hill. We have sidewalks now on both sides, and signalized intersection, at the crosswalk.
Every time I walk up and down, I always get hit up for some cash from somebody walking down the street.
It just must look like the type, I don't know.
No, give me $10 though.
Nobody will talk to me when I walk up the hill.
Moving on, we have the Performance Monitoring Audit Committee, Denise Figueroa.
Thank you. The committee met here at 110 Waterville Avenue and on Microsoft Teams on March 23rd. We have 5 consent agenda items. The first one is approval of a contract for bus shelter purchases. Our contract for bus shelters has expired and a new contract is needed. An invitation for bid was issued and one bid was received from the incumbent Brasco International. The bid was it included shelter styles, quantities, and delivery schedules. Pricing is in line with prior contracts, and staff is satisfied with Brasco. The staff recommends a contract to Brasco, so we need a motion to award a 3-year contract with 2 optional renewal years to Brasco International of Madison Heights, Michigan, for a total contract value of $1,547,500.
So moved.
You got a second on that? Thank you, Jackie. Any questions about the contract with Brasco International?
So this is a not to exceed amount, just as the purchases?
I think there's an estimate, Georgie, of our cost.
Yes.
Couple hundred.
Who is the incumbent?
I have one question about bus shelters.
Sure.
So some of the shelters, I think you'll recall the one in Troy at number 22 on 4th. The open part of the shelter faces away from the street, which seems to be very strange and inconvenient. And I'm hoping that new shelters don't do that unless there's a really good reason.
I can answer.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mark, we'll check on that, fourth and where?
Let me try to find it on the map. It's sort of the main stop when you go into Troy where a number of different buses transfer.
Yeah, we'll look into that. I think that's a BRT stop, and I think I know why that's that way, but let me get back to you.
Isn't it typically because of the snow plowing and snow removal? Like,
Snow plowing,
so
snow
it protects it?
removal, the neighborhood it's in, the depth of the sidewalk. I think it's, Jeremy's nodding, I think it's the depth of the sidewalk there. There's not a whole lot of room. So you are not always putting the shelter the way it might be best for customers. Sometimes you have to, put that sidewalk is not.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
yeah, I think it's Bolton and Troy.
I'll get back to you with a specific, Mark, rather than generic.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 11, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's approved.
Okay, thank you. The next item is actually approval of a contract for bus shelter installation. Not purchase, but the installation. So as a follow-up to the last item, we need a contract to install shelters. Invitation for bid was issued and 2 bids were received. The low bidder was disqualified as not responsible. So HMA Contracting was the only qualified bidder. HMA is the incumbent and has performed satisfactory work. The staff is recommending a contract to HMA Contracting. And so we need a motion to award a 3-year contract with 2 optional renewal years to HMA Contracting Corporation of Mechanicville for a total value of $2,017,750. I can make that motion.
Okay, please, thank you. Can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions, comments about HMA Contracting, reputable company here in the Capital District?
We did have quite a discussion on it because I didn't read the second part. I read the first part and all my questions were the second. So we hashed it over.
Just as Joe brings up a good point, this is for all the, it's not just plopping a shelter down, it's usually pouring a concrete pad, doing usually some clearing work and things of that nature. If you do the math, it's cost and install the shelter, approaches $20,000. So this firm will be busy pretty much every day of the week. There's always something that we need done.
Great, any other comments?
Can I ask Jeremy?
Sure.
Do you have somebody on site all the time?
We have our shelter crews that are on site for the 2 shifts, first and second shift, and on Saturdays, not on Sundays, not overnight. First and second shift and on Saturdays.
Thank you.
Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's approved. Go on, Denise.
Okay, the next item is approval of a contract for scheduling software maintenance. Hastis software is used for fixed route scheduling. The proprietary maintenance contract includes software updates and issue resolution. Pricing represents a year-over-year increase of 2.5%, which is consistent with industry standards. Staff recommends a 3-year sole source maintenance contract to Giro for the Hastis software system. So we need a motion to award a 3-year contract to Giro of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, for an amount not to exceed $875,294.
Can I get a motion on that? Thank you, Jackie. Second?
Second.
Joe? Let me do this every year.
Yeah,
Let's see.
so the maintenance,
Well, honestly, you're probably confusing between Giro, Genfair, Inid, trapeze, we have all these Munis, I forgot, all these software products now that we use that are, who you kidding, they're basically sole proprietorships. We couldn't find someone to do the maintenance on Giro if we tried. Well, we probably could, but we wouldn't want to do that.
Guarantee it.
So, yeah, it probably does feel like you're getting one of these a year, or one of these every 6 months. And if we go back, you probably are. But this is the system, the software that we use to develop the schedules. Also, more importantly, it's really the way the work is carved out, and drivers select work. It's very detailed stuff. A lot of lefts and rights. I can schedule. I know how to schedule. It's done by hand. It would take me probably 10 times as long as it takes people.
You moved away from that.
Move forward. Remember, I sit at a scheduler's table every single day.
Any questions about this contract? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's approved.
Okay, our next item is approval of a contract for fare box purchase. We need to purchase fare boxes for our Washington Western BRT that will be delivered this fall. However, the fare box contract with SPX GenFare has expired. For continuity reasons, staff recommends a sole source contract for 16 fare boxes to SPX GenFare. The cost is fair and reasonable. We need a motion to award a contract to SPX Corporation of Elk Grove Village, Illinois, for an amount not to exceed $212,701.
Can I get a motion on that? Thank you, Peter. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Georgie. So nice. Thank you.
It's nice.
Thank you for being here. Any questions or comments about this contract?
We should explain that these are for all the new buses that are coming in, not just.
Yep, for the Washington BRT, yeah.
How long do we expect these to last?
Oh gosh, Georgie, they're workhorses. They last as long as the bus. Oftentimes, we take them out of an old bus and put them into a new bus. I mean, they have a long life expectancy. I don't have a year. But there might be fare boxes that are 15 or 20 years old in operation.
ROI?
I'm sorry.
Return on investment.
That one is a pretty good return on that.
Yeah.
Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, our last item for approval here is the resolution to accept state funding. It's always a good one. We received FDA funding from a variety of grant programs that requires New York State DOT to provide CDTA a 10% match to these funds. The New York State DOT also provides two separate capital programs, the Accelerated Transit Capital and Modernization and Enhancement Program. We need a resolution to accept $9,916,003 in state funding for our 10% match and 100% of the two New York State capital programs.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Seems like we do this every year, so.
Yeah, yeah, I find
Happily.
it comical. We do it, and I'd love to tell you that because of your action and support, that state funds will flow in here within a month. That's not the way this works, but basically now, we can now submit the paperwork, complete it, and then we wait. It's a long process.
But it's still a good thing.
Oh, okay. I always tell the folks with the DOT and DOB, what would you expect the board to say?
Seems silly, huh?
We humor them.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Resolution is approved.
Okay, next item here is the investment committee did meet prior to the committee meeting on the 23rd, and we will be providing a summary report to the board after the fiscal year-end reports are complete. So you should be receiving that sometime in April. administrative discussion items, we had the monthly management report, was provided by Mike Collins. The MR2 has exceeded budget projections 11 straight months and continues its record-breaking run. We are $5.6 million over budget year-to-date. Customer fares and rail station revenues continue to recover and outperform our forecasts. Year-to-date, they are 62% and 110% above our estimates, which we had reduced for this year because of COVID. But we are happy to see that. So, expenses improved in February, and we are 1.4% under budget for the year. The year-to-date wage line remains over budget due to headcount challenges, but most other expense lines are under budget for the year. We are in a good financial position, and we anticipate a solid finish to the year. Any questions on that for
A question on you just mentioned on the headcount broader question. How's that going? I understand clearly the pandemic, there are openings for return to work, and I've seen the reports that suggest that there are less positive results on a daily basis, but what about just hiring in general? I know that's still...
Yeah, let me try to put the best spin I can on it, Pete. Believe it or not, the hiring doesn't appear to be the biggest problem. It's a struggle, it's hard, and Kelly and her team have come up with all sorts of new ways to recruit. So we're getting people in the doors, not that they don't want to come here, but retention is really the issue. I see Jackie does this as well, nodding. People leave, and we are right now in the middle of the tear it apart analysis as to why. That's where it becomes a little bit elusive. The first thing is everybody wants to say it's money. On first pass, that's not the case. Yeah, more money is always a good thing, but it's a lot of things. The schedule, the way you have to work nights and weekends, that's not appealing to a lot of people. So even though we think our package of wages and benefits are good, and I think they are, they're solid, it takes a certain kind of person. And if you're just not inclined, for whatever that reason might be, family, place in your life, you don't want to do that. We used to get warning. Now we seldom get warning. It's just, I'm done. I'm out of here. And it's the way it is. I just got an APTA report. APTA surveyed their members on this. I didn't see anything in there that was different than what we're saying. But, and the staff will tell you this is where I'm a pain. I don't care if that's what the industry says. We're going to find a better way. That's easy to say, right? But that's where we are right now. We're going to find a better way. We have to resolve the retention issue.
Yeah.
Like, we've lost 390 people in the last 5 years. Now, that's people who retired, that's people who were terminated, that's people who moved, that's people who were separated, that's people, all the categories. I have said if we could keep 90 of those, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So 390, if we had kept 90, maybe that's not possible. But to just say this is the way it is, not yet. Let's give it a little bit more effort, a little more fight. But it's not a pretty picture.
How does it compare to, say, 10 years ago?
Oh, dramatically different. 5 years ago, it's different. The retention issues are, I guess, life change. We've never seen anything like this.
No, and just, the number of applicants that were, everything has just fallen. The retention absolutely is our biggest battle, but even just getting people in the door, there's so many things they have to do before we can hire them, and one of those is almost always going to knock them out, whether it's, the pre-employment test or the background check or the physical, or it's difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure you all have the same story. I mean, I was talking to Dave last night. We were texting back and forth, and small accounting firm, it's a couple of people in and out. That never happened during tax season in an accounting firm. Now it doesn't matter what the season is. The person's unhappy or sees something better, boom, away I go. I don't know what you're seeing at the accounting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of factors I think that push into this. There's a proliferation of like work from home opportunities for people, and that's very attractive to some people. We're losing a lot of like attorneys to that are able to get like a, law firm in New York City that'll let them work from their house, and then like the, young childcare stuff seems to be playing. And then just like myriad of all sorts of just very different reasons that are not anything that you can like string together as a pattern.
Yeah, so we did a spreadsheet, Kelly, you came from it, so I'm forgetting where this stuff comes from sometimes. It's this wide of reasons, and then we collapsed it into categories. But Jackie's right, that's the challenge. There are so many reasons that you can't string them together and say, we can fix that if we did this. And yeah, I think back to the opening salvo, money will help a bit, but I don't think this will go away if you just threw a couple of bucks at the hour.
Do you have exit interviews?
Oh, yeah. A lot of what we're giving you is based on exit interviews. We want to get better at that. We think we can get better at the exit interviews to really probe a little bit more. But, put yourself in the HR person's shoes or the superintendent, whoever is doing the exit interview. Sometimes people won't let you probe.
Or they just never come.
Or they never come back.
We don't have a chance to
People
even
don't
catch
even get a
up.
chance to exit interview.
Do you have a voluntary, online questionnaire that they can take as part of the exit?
We don't, we usually do it in person.
I found that pretty helpful. Yeah, it's just a set of 20 questions that they can click on and do on their own time and not vocalize it necessarily. Yeah.
It's an interesting workforce too, right? It's just a mix of people, right? And we're pretty diverse. I was going to say we're as diverse as you can find. I don't know if I can say that, but we're pretty diverse. I mean, it's old, young, male, female, all kinds of colors, all kinds of languages, all kinds of backgrounds. Ian's from Jamaica. We have a lot of people from Jamaica. We have a lot of people from Ghana. We have a lot of people all over the place. And so that background makes, I think, things even more difficult for us.
Is it a group that is leaving, bus drivers or?
Well, bus drivers, it stands out because their numbers are so big as a percentage of the total workforce, but it's everybody.
What's the average? The average age is like 47.
It's down a bit. It's down a bit.
Is it? Yeah, I know it was getting up there when we did the pensions.
Yeah, it's probably 43 or 44 now.
But Carm, your description, because I think everyone around the table, the reason the question is asked is we're all different industries or working, and we're all having, and you have a microcosm of several industries under one roof, right? And you're suggesting that this is, we're well past the point of suggesting that this is, I recognize this happened 2 years ago. This is a lot of this is new and we're trying to figure it out. So the question was really asked to see how you're coping, because I think everyone is struggling.
Pete, I appreciate the question because I think everyone has to know that we're coping. Barely. It's really difficult. We're staring down the barrel of, service expansion. We're staring down the barrel of, more expectations of us. You don't receive federal funding like we're receiving, and hopefully, I see Lisa Morello just called me, state funding, like we're going to be receiving, and not provide more. Right? I mean, that's the expectation. The expectation is you're going to provide more, and you're going to provide different ways for people to move. That's going to be a struggle. Without trimming, that's not going to work. That's usually the way we did things in the past. Borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and that's kind of how we always balanced ourselves. I think we have a different challenge in us.
Right, in this environment, you can't be trimming your service.
No.
You
Unacceptable.
really can't be.
Right.
It's
Unacceptable.
just,
People are standing on their heads every day. Well, actually, this has been a good week. I just ran into, I just ran into one of the architects on one of the dispatchers. These guys and gals stand on their heads to get work on it and piece everything together. Because another thing that, I don't want to take up the whole board meeting with this topic, but another thing that we're running into is we have seems like more people who are willing to call out today, this morning, today. That just didn't happen years ago. So it's just a different approach. And a lot of them are valid reasons. Things happen, like a daycare thing will pop up.
Oh, yeah.
They have no control. So I won't be there for my 5 o'clock pull-out, 5 a.m. Oh, so the dispatcher's sitting there with a 5 a.m. pull-out and looks out, and there's nobody to cover that 5 a.m. pull-out. They chop it up, attach it to this, or move it to that, and that's happening every single day. That is tiring. That is tiring the whole organization.
Yeah.
So we'll get through it, but it's just like everywhere else. Not very good.
Okay. That's sidebar, yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
sidebar. Good sidebar.
And some of it's related to the.
It is.
The
Well, you're gonna see
non-financial
it.
report, yes.
I think Denise, the next line.
Yes, exactly. Just what I was gonna say. Yeah, so Chris Designate provided the non-financial report, and ridership does continue to improve. Total ridership is up 26% this month and 16% for the year. Star ridership is up 33% for the month and 47% for the year. Our fixed on-time performance is at 78%, and our star on-time performance is at 75%. This is the part that relates. Missed trips remain higher than usual, and continued staffing issues are contributing to this uneven pattern. And we expect this to continue for the next few months as we balance services and manpower. Probably a little optimistic. But,
Yeah,
well, I mean,
there's
you know,
some
it's
reason for optimism.
big issues.
Kelly's team, we just graduated a class, we just started a class, we've got another class lined up. Again, if we don't have that constant departures, we project to be better, and in fact, we look a little bit better over the last week or two. Yeah, do look a little better. It feels a little better.
And finally, preventable accidents are at 24 this month, and non-preventable accidents are at 17. So unless there are any questions, the next meeting is April 20th at 85 Waterville Avenue and on Microsoft Teams.
Denise, can you clarify that 26%, is that compared to last month or this month last year?
This month last year, right? Isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
Georgia, almost all those things are, we try to stay consistent here. Same month last year, so that we don't get into we have 4 snow days.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's all relative if you keep doing that.
Do we still have the old anonymous suggestion box?
Here? I don't think there's any suggestion. I haven't suggestion boxes in a while.
No, we had them for a while and nothing ever ended up in the suggestion box.
Not even gum?
Sometimes
Oh,
hard.
looking for a
Yeah.
true manager.
Productive.
But there must be some way to go online and.
Well, there is, and we're in the process of, I think we've talked about this before in different venues, and it's in the strategic plan. We are working to develop a regular employee engagement survey stuff. In fact, talked to one of our consultants Monday. He should be ready to go in the next 2 months. So it's a formal, ongoing process of tell us what you think, rather than waiting for somebody to put something in a box. We're going to reach out to randomly selected people and engage them in what they think.
I mean, you're accessible all the time to.
Nobody talks to me. But let's be truthful. I mean, really? I mean, they come up and slap my back and I slap theirs. Yeah. We gotta set it up so that they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And there's no fear of any retribution. And that's what we're trying to get to.
Well, that's the key, a fear of retribution, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Tell us the truth. What do you really think? Why did you leave? Why are you uncomfortable with your manager? What is it about the XYZ department that is so ticking you off? Or the opposite, what's good? What should we be doing more of? So, and Mark Ash is the person we're dealing with on this. Mark's got a pretty sophisticated system to gather employee input, and it's consistent with what we do with him and other venues. So we've been talking for a long time. Give it a shot, see how it goes. If you don't like it,
And on the flip side, asking people like Mr. Williams or others, why you're still here.
yeah, right. And we forget that sometimes. I mean, like 50% of our workforce regularly gets an attendance bonus. Is that right? 50. So 55% of them come to work every single day. So yeah, it's I think the smaller percentage that we need to zoom in on. But yeah, why does Mr. Williams come to work every day? It's more than just he likes the overtime.
It's old school. Hate to say it, somewhat.
Somewhat, but you know, I find myself saying that. I'm stopping myself from saying that because when you start to dig into it, it's not just the 25-year person; it's the 5-year person who comes to work every day too. So we've got to be careful. That's why also having an independent mechanism to gather this input, I think, is important. It's not me. It's not Kelly. It's not Mike. It's someone. No one who they know.
Okay, we'll move on to the chair of the Community Stakeholder Relations Committee, Jackie Falatico.
Thanks. The Community Stakeholder Relations Committee met on March 24th at 11:15 here in person and also via Microsoft Teams. There were 2 administrative discussion items on the agenda. The first, John Scherzer presented on the return of CDPHP Cycle Season 6. It will return in early April and feature an expanded network, more bikes, and updated technology on board the bikes. They will be featuring a new controller which will allow riders to access the bikes by a QR code, which will allow for a simpler and quicker way to ride. Other highlights of Season 6 include service expansion into Manans and Waterville with connectivity to the rest of the network, and new cycle access partners, which includes Schenectady County, Rivers Casino, and Stewart's Shops. The second item, Jamie Caslow summarized the monthly Media Relations Community Engagement Report. CDTA earned 15 media placements in television, radio, and newspaper. Stories focused on the state of CDTA event held in early March, where the new car share program drive was unveiled, the planned service expansion into Montgomery County, Transit Worker Appreciation Day, and several other community partnerships. CARM outlined advocacy efforts by CDTA both on the state and national level with NIFTA and APTA. Efforts have been focused on increased funding for CDTA and transit properties across the state to allow for a deeper and more robust menu of mobility options for customers. And looking ahead, Jamie outlined upcoming events, which include the return of Cycle Season 6, I feel like I keep saying that, Earth Day events, and the launch of Car Share.
Are there any questions?
The expansion is great.
I have a question. Vanessa sent the attachment with the packet for last week's committee agenda with the minutes from the previous month. I think it would be helpful if it's practical for future board members' meetings to have minutes from the immediate preceding committee meetings.
Well, yeah, we can look at that, Mark. It gets a little hectic the week between the 3 committee meetings and the board meeting. We'll look at it if we can, or maybe we can send these notes out. Maybe the notes, because the notes serve as the basis for the minutes. Maybe we can get that done like the day before the meeting. They're usually done by then, right, Vanessa? Usually.
I think Christine sent out some notes.
Sometimes I chase people,
recently.
but they're used to that.
Yeah, I would get those a couple of days before.
We'll try that.
Jack, I'd just like to say, I said it at the last meeting, but I wanted to congratulate Jamie again for being on the national stage at the APTA. I said it.
Well, let me give you a little context.
Oh, I stole that.
So, I wanna have to do the CEO report, it's done. Several of us were in DC a couple of weeks ago, the APTA legislative conference, which you'll see in my report. I think it's the best of all of APTA's offerings. You get real good information, useful information, stuff you can bring home. And it's, pretty typical. We have a lot of congressional staff people, high-level Congress and senators also. We had several of them. They all want to talk about the bipartisan infrastructure. There's a lot of chest pounding in that regard, but it's acceptable. But where Jamie shined is, this is the first time that I recall anything like this. APTA had a panel discussion that focused on messaging, the stuff we talk about all the time. What are you going to do? How are you going to be better? What should people in the community expect? Jamie moderated that, and selfishly, I will say, she was light years above the other two panelists, because they were talking about ribbon cuttings and blowing up balloons, which is great, you gotta do that too. Jamie talked about the stuff that we're doing to, change the impression, I think, locally of who we are, what we do, and why we matter. Right? Yeah, she was up here somewhere. The other two who were from very good properties, they were very articulate, but I just thought that the examples they were using, I'm not sure that's really what we mean. But the fact that APTA had it on the agenda, I think is a step in the right direction.
It was very good.
Yep.
It really was. Great job.
Thanks, Pat.
Sorry, I didn't just-
That's okay. I'm crossing off all my stuff.
Alright, and one line left. The next meeting of the committee will be held on Thursday, April 21st at 11:15 a.m. Online via Teams or at 85 Waterloo Ave.
Thank you, Jackie. We'll move on to the Strategic and Operational Planning Committee report. Mike Gershon.
Yes, Jamie, thank you. The committee met last Thursday, 12 p.m. here at 110 Waterloo Ave and via Microsoft Teams. We have one consent agenda item for the board today, and that is the approval of the fiscal year 2023 budget. After several months of work, we have developed a spending plan for fiscal year 22 to 23. The plan allows us to expand our service footprint, introduce innovative programs, and to support technology initiatives that we are advancing. Most of the spending is for people. In fact, 70% of what we spend is for wages and benefits. This will continue as we work to attract more people to jobs at CDTA, as we discussed. Our funding streams have changed a bit, and most of this is good news. Mortgage tax receipts continue to be healthy, although we expect some slowing as the housing market cools. Customer and facility revenue rose steadily throughout last year, and we have budgeted for continued increases. State operating assistance will increase, and we continue to use American Rescue Act funds in our federal assistance line. This program is providing stopgap funding while revenue lines fully recover. The budget calls for $114 million in spending, and it is balanced with corresponding revenue. We also want to advance a 5-year capital plan as well. The first year of the capital plan is funded with $34 million from grants. About $20 million will fund new buses. The remainder will be used for facility projects, IT infrastructure and funding, the refresh of the red line equipment and amenities. Before we ask for a motion to adopt the budget, either Carm or Mike want to provide some information as to how we got to this point.
Thanks. I think Mike covered it pretty nicely and put hopefully a bow on a pretty big package, right? $114 million is quite the spending plan. I never thought I'd see the day when it was that large, but there's good reason for it because there are a lot of things that we want to do, and a lot of that is in the plan. But I wanted to thank everybody here for the work that you did. Whether you be a strategic and operational planning committee member, member of our informal group that we got together several times, Jamie, Dave, and Mike, to just sort of, you guys were like our what if people. Like, what if we did this, or could you try that? Or oftentimes you would say, why don't you think about this? That is, the type of stuff that goes oftentimes unsaid and unappreciated. I just want you to know that we appreciate it. It's an interesting time, right? It's a different time. I've been corresponding back and forth during the meeting with Lisa Morello to try to get the inside word on what's going on. She doesn't have an inside word. Everybody's tight-lipped. No one's talking. That's a good thing to think that no one's talking. Hopefully it's a business, but the one House bills, the governor's executive budget request and the one House bills, what was in there tells me that we finally got a little bit up over the hump and gotten people to appreciate the need for our services. The same is true of the bipartisan infrastructure act. People recognize what we do. Now it's up to us to deliver. So that whole conversation that Pete spurred is going to be part of what we spend the next 18 months doing. Delivering. We have to deliver now. We can point to bikes, we can point to scooters, we can point to drive. That'll get us lots of deliver credit. At the end of the day, it'll be the Montgomery County service, it'll be the BRT service, it'll be better frequencies on that route or that route, or connections that are improved that really will be proof positive that we're worthy recipients. Dave Stackrow's talked about this for 3 years. We're going to have to prove to Congress that investments in infrastructure are worthwhile. And I think if they can look back and they can get a thumbs up that they are, you might see more spending. And the same is going to be true at the state level. Everyone's going to want to know, okay, well, what did the upstate transit systems do with that $50 million that we added to the governor's budget? That's what would be the add if we are successful in one House bills. What did they do? How are communities better off? So, thanks for sticking with us. It was tough. We got a lot of federal money flowing through that we need to, move, and I think we've got the right mechanism in place. If Mike's comfortable with it, and really he and Phil Perella are the ones who I lean on. It's their comfort zone, and if they're comfortable, I'm comfortable. I think we found a way to do that so that we're all comfortable.
Is there a line item for Montgomery County?
No. It's in the wage line, and there's money from Montgomery County. It's not called out. We will track it. We'll know what we spend there, but it's not called out. I think that was a smart move.
That wouldn't go under county assistance either?
Well, there is no county assistance from Montgomery. Well, there is. It's $300,000, which added to the $1.8 billion line. I think it's 1.8 in the budget. That hasn't changed. I know that by heart because it hasn't changed in 50 years. There's very little county assistance. So whenever I talk to a county executive or a county manager, they don't want to tell me how much money they give us, local match. I have to politely tell them, no, you don't. Well, that's Section 18B2 program. Well, Section 18B2 hasn't changed in 50 years. While we're talking about the budget, I just want to recognize Phil Perella. Phil is I call him the budget hawk. I remember a guy who used to work for Mayor Corning. I forgot his name, but he was the budget hawk. He was the most feared member of the Corning administration because if you wanted something, you had to sort of justify it with the budget hawk. Once the budget hawk put it in the budget, not a problem. But Phil has been that guy. I don't think he's a hawk, but he's been that guy for a number of years, and I think that he's leaving us. He's got a great opportunity in front of him for him and his family in suburban Washington, Northern Virginia, if you're familiar with that. And by the way, little trivia, he is not the first CDTA staff person to go to that property. We had a person leave here about 20 years ago who was the executive director for a time down there. So they must know that CDTA people are good people. But as I said to Phil, he will knock it out of the park there. I have no doubt whatsoever. And whatever they need to turn it around, he'll turn it around. All the best to Phil and his family.
So the floodgates are open now? See you, Phil.
Hey, Carm, I don't want to step, but I just want to congratulate Phil, and as a community in Lansingburg, he's an icon. Phil's been entrenched in the community, so the whole community is gonna miss him up there.
Yeah, the Catholic High guys are crying.
Everybody is.
CBA
Bob
South
Warner, the
really
Little
don't
League.
care about that.
He took. I just wanted to say that Lee's very gonna miss him.
Yep, sure will.
All right, so the committee recommends approving the fiscal year 2023 operating plan totaling $114,349,217 and a 5-year capital plan totaling $329,581,704.
Okay.
Point of order. I'd like to separate the two, vote separately.
Okay, in order to do that, we would need someone to second that motion for a separate resolution. Do I hear a second on that?
A separate, I don't understand. What do you mean, just a separate resolution?
Separate the operating and the capital budget.
Correct. So we would be amending the resolution to take out the 5-year capital plan component. It would be dealt with as a separate resolution.
Is there a purpose for that?
Right now, we just have a motion.
I want to debate the capital plan.
What is the purpose?
I want to debate the capital plan.
So let's just separate them out, but let's debate it.
Totally,
Yeah, but why do you want to do that? What's your purpose? You're just tying things up.
It seems to me spending, $114 million deserves. That's the operating budget. The capital budget is more.
Yeah, but nobody's hiding
$329
anything. It's
million
right there in black and
deserves,
white.
deserves consideration and not just a rubber stamp. I have some issues.
totally up to the board how you want to handle this. There is a clarification on the 5-year capital plan. The 5-year capital plan it totals $350 million. However, only the first year is funded. The first year totals $35 million. I would call years 2 through 5, and especially years 4 and 5, aspirational. So with that caveat, I don't know if that clarifies things a little bit.
So here, I think a better way to deal with this is to get a motion and a second on resolution 16, which includes both components. And so we can start the debate, and if the part of the discussion is to separate them, then we'll go into the way and how we'll deal with that. So can I get a motion? Thank you, Denise. Can I get a second on this resolution? Thank you, Joe. So now we'll open the floor for any debate on the pending resolution on both the operating budget and the capital budget.
All I'm saying is it's gonna add another layer to the bureaucracy that we don't need. I mean, it's all right there in black and white. I think we're honorable people. We're not trying to hide anything. But that's me.
Any other discussion about resolution?
There's a major policy issue that I want to discuss.
You can discuss it right now if you'd like, Mark.
Yeah. Specifically, we have a climate crisis which is shocking and horrifying the scientific community. A couple of days ago, for the first time ever, a major ice sheet on East Antarctica just broke off and disintegrated. That there's thawing in the permafrost in Siberia, which potentially could release huge amounts of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere if it's not stopped. So a transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, we're not just talking about polar bears and future generations. According to Oxfam, there's 28 million people now in East Africa threatened with famine due to drought. So I would like to accelerate the timetable for converting to electric buses. I understand from DEC Commissioner Sagos said that the governor's plan is to only purchase electric buses as of 2027. I'm not sure whether calendar years versus fiscal years exactly where that point is, but the sooner we can make the transition, the less cumulative damage there will be.
Mark, listen, you know, the whole issue of electrifying our fleet has been a difficult discussion, and I think you know that we are engaged in this pilot as we speak. We're also talking with different people at the state level who may or may not want to mandate, you know, electrification and when that occurs. Chris Desney and Lance Sarcone are putting together right now a plan of how many vehicles we will buy in every year for the next, frankly, probably the next 10 years, and how soon we would get to the point where we are either mostly or all electric. This discussion, though, is much more complex than I think people are giving it credit for. It involves more than just buying buses. It involves infrastructure that we don't have. It involves some decisions that the board is going to have to grapple with. That's where the budget is really only funded in year one. Things like facilities and facility planning. Right now, if we are to use these facilities, it will take us light years to electrify. There are questions that we don't have answers to right now. However, if we choose to build new facilities, you know, pick a year, by 2030, let's say, we would easily be electrified. But those decisions are, in each case, like a garage, a facility. We're talking $100 million minimum. That's money that we don't have. That's money that we're being promised. That's money that we're being told we'll think about. There is no statewide master plan. There is no federal master plan. Every system has to develop their own plan. We want to do things like this as much as you do, but we can only afford to fund the capital plan 1 year at a time, because that's how money has been released. Money is not released in 5-year increments at the levels that we need. So there's no fight or disagreement on this, the direction, but as far as the capital plan is concerned, we just don't have the resources to do that.
Can National Grid assure us that we can have all the electricity we need?
No.
So, and what this capital plan does also, it doesn't specify what type of buses they're going to do. This provides, the staff is slated with, in the next 5 years, these are the main items that we're gonna need, right? It doesn't specify that the new fleet vehicles will be electric. It lays out a foundation that we build on, so they know they have this amount of money, and you know, if the decision and what we can do with that, based on, you know, like Carm just said, laid out with the facility planning, we do that ahead of time. If that justifies that we can go electrification route on some of these buses, so that adjustment is made. You know, this isn't a specific, you know, feed to the fire, but this lays it out so the board knows what to expect in the next 5 years.
And if additional resources are had for electrifying, we will add that to the capital plan.
Yes, Dave.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just as and this isn't a comment on the budget, but just the separating. I don't want to speak for Mark, but I think we have a member who may want to support the operating budget, but may be uncomfortable supporting the capital budget. I personally have no issue separating them into two motions if that's the comfort of the board. I believe we have done that in the past. I think we have voted on them separately. So, you know, if that would help the member to be comfortable in supporting the operating budget, but maybe not supporting the capital budget, I would support that separation.
Direct response. Yes, I think it would be good practice in any case to separate them, even if there were no issues, because they're two completely different things.
Fair enough.
And I do understand Carm's point that we're only committing to the first year of the capital budget, and the rest of it is hypothetical. And I do see that for the last 2 years in the table, 2/3 of the bus acquisition funding is in the electric bus line rather than the conventional, which I do appreciate. But I would like to separate it as a general policy, not just in this particular case.
I have no objection.
Staff has no objections, and I also want members to know that a 5-year capital plan is a state requirement, not a CDTA requirement. If we were to do this, I wouldn't be giving you aspirational numbers.
And we still have to go through all proper procurement procedures for anything that we go through with this.
That's not an issue.
Sure, the capital plan doesn't obligate the board to future spending. So if there's no objection, then we will separate the items here. Is there any objection to voting on these separately as an operating budget and a capital plan? Seeing none, then that's what we will do. Are there any other comments then on sort of the first item here, the operating budget? Comments, questions? We've sat through a lot of committee meetings.
I just want to make a comment. I think it's an excellent job considering all of the flood of money and balancing all of the things and yeah. So great work to everyone.
Yeah. It's amazing how much work goes into one paper.
Yeah, so Phil can't leave without keys to his Excel spreadsheet.
I know, I heard about those tabs.
Yeah.
So.
He is the king of tabs.
Stir the pot and get on the bus.
So with respect to the operating budget then, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the operating budget say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The operating budget is approved. I will now need a motion and a second to consider the 5-year capital plan. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie. A second? Second. Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion about the 5-year capital plan?
Another point I wanted to note is that the two biggest items are the downtown Albany intermodal for 24 and the consolidated operations facility in 26. I look forward to seeing those. Are there sketches or drawings or plans available that we could see?
I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because it shows some of the aspirational nature of the capital plan. We have some sketches on the intermodal center. We'll share those next month. But as far as the consolidated facility, I'm not even sure it's going to be a consolidated facility because we haven't even talked to all of you about location and opportunities and what are, right now that's just a placeholder number. We have not much there. So yes to intermodal, we have nothing on consolidated facility.
This isn't gonna hamstring any spending though,
No,
correct?
not at all. It's really only the first year that we're worried about. 1 year at a time.
Any other comments about the capital plan? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the 5-year capital plan say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain?
The resolution is approved. Thank you.
Yes.
Back to Mike.
Yes, one last comment. The next meeting of the committee will be,
We never get to that last
will be April 21st, 12 p.m. at 85 Waterville Ave for the Microsoft Teams. And that concludes my report.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
We'll move on to the next item, which is the CEO's report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure what else I have left here. Let me just, the budget, the governor's budget, I thought it would be done by tomorrow. Doesn't look that way now. Right now, it looks like radio silence, which is pretty normal, but it's sort of late. It just went radio silent, so, you know, you all know, I think, what are in the one House bills as compared to the executive budget request. If something like that were to happen, or something in the middle of the governor and the one House happens, I think that's good for us, more operating assistance, more capital money. There's a lot of policy in the budget still, so in a lot of ways, this governor's not much different than the last governor. They're still throwing a lot of policy stuff in there, like, mandating electrification, changing paratransit boundaries, things of that nature. Some of which is good, some of which, we've questioned. But we've spent a lot of time on this in the last 2 months, more so than I ever recall being. But again, it's part of that sort of constant education program. I met senators and assembly people who I don't think I ever would have met before, who we felt it was important that we talk to, NIPTA especially. Lisa Morello has stayed pretty tried and true to what she has told us. We have to be very selfish. We support the statewide efforts, but we have to be selfish and tell our story and about what we do and what we need, and we've done that. Montgomery County is in the governor's executive budget request. It's in the Senate and the Assembly. So I think that her guidance has paid off. We'll see what the final number is as we move forward. I think we've covered our budget enough. Montgomery County plans keep moving along. We'll be in a position, if appropriate funding is included, to make an announcement. I think the community is looking for us to make an announcement. But everything from developing the route network to putting a plan together to hire people and to assign them to Montgomery County, to John Scherzer and his group have been out meeting with people in the community. The receptivity to us has been pretty good, maybe over the top good. Everybody from the school district to St. Mary's Hospital to employers, but it's no different in Montgomery County. There are help wanted signs up along Route 5S, so it's not like we're going to find all kinds of new people, but we hope that maybe our brand will attract people. We're going to ask Jamie and John to work together to make sure it's known that we're there. Maybe that will help us to attract people. So that is Montgomery County. My activity report. Please forgive the redundancy. I just wanted you to know the different people that we've met with along the way. And then last but not least, thank you for those of you that could make the State of CDTA event either in person or via Facebook Live, which is a new tool for us. I think it goes to show you the relationships we've built. If you paid attention to the panel discussion. And I can tell you, every one of those panelists, we've had follow-up conversations about different ways to either expand our relationship or change it. Everybody, I've talked to Dennis McKenna twice since then about different things at the medical center. Maureen O'Brien was in here, Center for Disability Services, about ways that they might be able to help us. And Steward Shop, there's a couple of things that sometimes we don't talk about. That's the good news. Steward Shop started in one store. We'll try this passes for employees in one store. John, how many are they up to?
I think Tony said 15 minimum.
15?
15, and they're also shuttling. They're allowing them now, so if an employee can't work or they need help in another store, the access to the network is allowing them to move people around.
So we're in 15 stores and using our service to get an employee who works on Everett Road but is needed on Sand Creek Road, by bus. So that's a good thing. And Amazon. We have been working with Amazon. Well, we've been working with developers, the Rensselaer County officials. I guess maybe distant cousins of Amazon management for lots of time. But we finally set up an agreement with them where they're using our service to get to and from their campus out in Skodak. And John, give me the numbers again.
First 3 weeks, 1,000 rides a week. So to start at that level, we're generally going to see an upward trend.
First 3 weeks, see 1,000 a week and going up. So, I guess the message here is persistence, never taking no for an answer, just kind of always banging on their door. John's pretty good at that.
1,000 a week? Is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Small, not small.
150 people.
They'll grow.
Good job, John.
That's awesome.
And last but not least, we've put together an arrangement with Schenectady County, where Schenectady County employees will now have universal access. So we did it by rolling all of our smaller programs together under an umbrella, so the county was comfortable. And I heard that how many passes?
Oh, we're up to like 55 now.
And they haven't even announced it yet.
Yeah, it's been like 4 days, so.
So,
That's great.
I still think that this is where our bread is gonna be buttered. We can chase the individual rider, and we have people who do that, but the corporate efforts are these kinds of things, universal access, things like that. Where we can wholesale the business, and make it easy for an employer or an employee to get around. So, lots of good news. That's it.
Report? Okay. Board member comments, anything else from the chatty board today?
Mark, I just disagree with your ideas, but I don't disagree with you bringing them up at all.
Joe? Any other comments? Our next meeting, board?
One comment, just wanna thank again the staff for making these meetings so easy, pulling this stuff together.
Yeah.
Just allowing us to discuss, so, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Well, I guess, listen, we appreciate this. Dave and I, Denise, Georgie, we go back a long way on this board governance model. We've worked really hard to get to where we are. We need your input. We want your input. We want questions. The exchange of information, I think, makes us better. So please, whether it's in this format or you're bored someday and you want to call me or you want to talk to a staff member about a particular program or service, that's going to make us better. I think if we just approve the budget and move along, that's not healthy. So we appreciate that a lot.
Well said. The next meeting of the board is April 27th at noon, again at 85 Waterville Avenue or via Microsoft Teams. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So.
Thank you, Peter. Second by Joe. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Vanessa?